So first, let's define what is an inferior good. See, in the previous lecture, we were discussing about income effect and substitution effect. And these two were done for normal goods. So one of the basic properties of normal goods is that how do we define if a good is normal or inferior? If income rises, demand would rise. This is the definition of a normal good. But however, whenever we define inferior goods, these are those goods where if income rises, demand would fall. For example, let's take the case of black and white televisions, right? So there was a time when black and white televisions were prevalent, right? But now, as incomes are growing, there are color televisions. So, as incomes grow, people switch from black and white to normal TVs, like the colored one. So, what is happening in this case when income is rising, demand for black and white TVs is falling. So whenever जहाँ पर भी ये inverse relation देखने को मिलता है, whenever we see this inverse relation, we define the good as an inferior good. So inferior good means whenever the income would rise, demand would fall. Now we have to do the same thing that we did in the last class with respect to inferior goods. So now we make the same column X and Y, substitution effect, income effect, X and Y, right? So now suppose price of X falls. Am I audible and is the screen visible? Could someone revert back? Am I audible and the screen visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So suppose PX falls, right? Now, according to the substitution effect, what was happening was that demand of X was going up and demand was for Y was going down, right? Okay, let me change this. So this was X, this was Y. This was substitution effect, this was income effect and price effect. So when price of X falls, demand for X rises, demand for Y falls. So no matter if the good is inferior or Giffen, the substitution effect remains the same. So there is no change. What happens to the income effect now? So suppose PX fall. Is the purchasing power going up or down? The purchasing power, real income, is going up. So the consumer is richer. But now we are not in the setup of a normal good. We are in the setup of an inferior good. So in this case, what would happen? The consumer is richer. So that means he would reduce the quantity of y x. Why? Because x is an inferior good. But what about y? Y is a normal good. So what happens is that the quantity of y would rise. So in this case, the total price effect, what happens is that this might rise or fall and this might rise or fall. Now let's compare it to the case when X was a normal good. When X was a normal good, हमें पता था that due to income effect, this will rise. तो ये unambiguously हमें पता था law of demand was holding true. PX falls and X rises. But this is not true here. Here, the quantity of X might fall or rise. So let's like write this again. So now Px is falling, right? There are situations in this case with respect to X. I'm not talking with respect to Y. Now, situation number one, when substitution effect of X is greater than income effect of X. Look into this table clearly. If substitution effect is greater, so that means rise in quantity, this is greater. So that means Px falls, X rises. That means your law of demand holds. Case number two. Substitution effect of X is less than income effect of X. In this case, what would happen if income effect is more? X की quantity is falling. So in this case, Px falls and quantity of X falls. So that means both are directly related. So that means law of demand fails in this case. So I'll give a statement, okay? Then we'll redo this. If X is an inferior good, meaning demand for X is negatively related to income. In this case, if income effect of price change, that is this case, is greater than substitution effect, the law of demand fails. What is law of demand? That price and quantity demanded are negatively related. But in this case, it is falling. Both are positively related. And the good is defined as a Giffen good, meaning price rises, quantity demanded for X rises, price falls, quantity demanded for X falls. So that means law of demand fails and this good is inferior plus Giffen. Okay, let's revise this. So what we discussed was we discussed the bifurcation of substitution and income effect for normal good. When X was normal, Y was normal. Now we are introducing the case when there is a good X, which is not normal, it is an inferior good, right? So when X is an inferior good, how do we define an inferior good? जब इनकम बढ़ती है तो उसकी डिमांड कम होती है. So the relation between income and demand is negatively related for an inferior good. Now, in this case, let's do the bifurcation between substitution and income effect. So now we'll make the table again like we usually do. The price of X falls. Just any questions? Okay, so price of X falls. So now we have made this table. Just pay attention to the table. Now, in this case, according to the substitution effect, everything remains the same no matter the good is normal or inferior. So the quantity of X rises and Y falls. This is the substitution effect. Everything remains the same. But now there is a change in the income effect. What happens is when price of X falls, the consumer feels richer. When the consumer is feeling richer, in a way, income has gone up. But now this is not a normal good. So demand would go down. But Y is a normal good, so uska demand will go up. Now, in the final circumstances, this can go up or down, this can go up and down. इससे पहले our focus was on Y, whether the quantity of Y would go up or down. But now our focus has shifted to good X, Y, it is an inferior good. So let's see what would happen in case of an inferior good. Now, in this, there can be two situations. One, when the substitution effect of price change is greater than income effect of price change. When substitution effect is greater means the rise in X is greater than the fall in X. So that means the quantity of X would rise. So that means Px falls, X rises. So that means everything is same in this case. Price was this, X was this, Law of demand holds, meaning there is a negative relation between price and quantity demanded. This is case number one. Case number two, when substitution effect of X is less than income effect of X. In this case, what happens is income effect is greater, meaning quantity of X will fall in final equilibrium. So Px falls, X also falls. But you see, both P and X are negatively related in this case. So that means law of demand fails in this case. So this is a special case of inferior good. In this case, case number two, the goods are known as Giffen goods. Now, in case number one, are the goods inferior? Yes. But are the goods Giffen? No. So case number one is the case when the good is an inferior good. Okay, so sorry, I got a call. Am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, shouldn't in second case both P and X should be positively related rather than negative?
In second part. Okay, yeah, they are positively related. Okay, yes, there was an error. That's why law of demand is failing now because they are positively related. Okay, so first is the case when the good is an inferior good, but not Giffen. So, how do we define an inferior Giffen good? A Giffen good is an inferior good where your income effect is greater than your substitution effect. That's how you define a Giffen good. So, I have two questions. These questions are generally asked in the paper as well. Every inferior good is Giffen. Comment. You have to tell whether this is true or false, and then every Giffen, you'll raise hands and then answer. Every Giffen good is inferior. True or false and comment. So before answering, I mean, who wants to answer? You can raise hands or write in the chat box. Issue meeting. Anyone who wants? Okay, Parikshit wants to answer. Okay, Parikshit, answer.
The first statement is false and the second statement is true because Giffen good is a subset of the inferior good. Both Giffen and inferior goods show the negative uh, income effect.
Mm-hmm.
How Giffen goods are the goods, inferior goods in which the income effect outweighs the substitution effect. So second statement is true, but the first is false.
Okay, ठीक है. Now we'll do the bifurcation. Thank you, Parikshit. It was good. Okay, now let's do the bifurcation. How do you show this on a graph? px fall हो रहा है, bifurcation है. Please pay attention to this. Again, it is tricky. So this is your point E. Right now, again we make that box for our convenience. Substitution effect x and y. Substitution effect remains the same. एक्स की क्वांटिटी बढ़ेगी, वाई की कम होगी. सब्सिट्यूशन नाउ इनकम इफेक्ट में द कंज्यूमर इज पी एक्स फॉल हो रहा है तो इट ही इज रिचर. व्हेन ही इज रिचर, सो इन अ वे इनकम इज राइजिंग, बट देन एक्स हैज टू फॉल बिकॉज इट्स एन inferior good, and y will rise because he is richer, and y is a normal good. So after making this table, let's bifurcate. We know when x, according to the substitution effect, x has to rise. So that means I have to draw a dotted line to in this segment, EB segment. Why? Because x has to rise and y has to fall. So that means let me draw a dotted line like this. Like this. Now this dotted line has to be particularly parallel to AC. The dotted line will be parallel to AC. Okay, now let me mark a point on this dotted line E dash. And we know substitution effect is E to E dash. Nothing changes. This is the same that we did in the last class. Now let's talk about the income effect. According to the income effect, the quantity of X has to fall and Y has to rise. So that means E dash say I have to move to a point such that X is falling and Y is rising. So suppose, now in this case I have two cases. Suppose I move to this point, E double dash. Now in this case, E dash to E double dash is your income effect. But now see, if you move from E to E dash, E double dash, this is your total price effect. So in this case, the total quantity of X as a result of price effect is rising. So that means quantity of X is rising after a price fall. When the point is E double dash, right? So that means law of demand is still holding in this case. So if it is point E double dash, so it's an inferior good, but not Giffen. It is not Giffen. But now suppose E instead of E double dash, this is case number one, E double dash, we have E triple dash. This is case number two. This was case number one. This is case number two. In this case, when you compare, again, in this case, E double, E dash to E double dash is your income effect. But when you compare point E to E triple dash, if you compare this point and this point, you will see the quantity of X has finally gone down. So when the quantity of X has finally gone down, that means PX fall हुआ और XB fall करा. That means they are positively related. And in this case, income effect outweighs. So this is the case when the good is a Giffen good. So these are the two cases possible. This is how the bifurcation looks like. And to complete the diagram, let me draw the ICs. We will draw like this. इसको कैसे करके there will be an IC like this. And if this is the case, this is the IC. If the case is the second one where the good is an Giffen good, this becomes the IC. So this is the bifurcation. This is how your bifurcation looks for inferior and Giffen good. So this completes the topic, the first application of income and substitution effect, where you define an inferior good and where do you define a Giffen good. And the bifurcation might not be there in the readings, but it is a very well a part of your course. In the paper, they have many times so ask this bifurcation for a Giffen good. So don't think if it's not in the readings, the bifurcation is not in your course, especially for econers this bifurcation is in the course. Any doubts so far? If not, I can take attendance and we can wind up. Any doubts?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.